Welcome to this NLD Referee Society training module on the high tackle, presented by Mike Mulroy, the Society Training Officer. Content is provided by World Rugby, the RFU, Mike Mulroy and BT Sport. This might be a good time to pause the video, get yourself a piece of paper and mark it with a grid, something like this that you see on the screen. Clips numbered 1 to 10 with 4 decisions: play on, penalty kick, yellow card or red card. You'll need this as we go towards the end of the video so that we can mark down what your thoughts are on some examples we'll be showing you. Now, quite recently there was a lot of controversy in social media regarding the Will Spencer red card that he received whilst playing for Leicester Tigers following a dangerous tackle on Tommy Taylor. It's worth revisiting the approach that was directed by World Rugby in 2017, as it's just as applicable today as it was then.
Calling all rugby players, coaches, referees, parents, volunteers and fans. From the 3rd of January 2017, there will be a new, tougher approach to reckless and accidental head contact in the sport through 2 new categories of dangerous tackle. The 2 new categories of dangerous tackle are: number 1, reckless tackle, where a player knew or should have known there was a risk of making contact with the opponent's head, but did it anyway. That also applies if the tackle starts below the line of the shoulders. And to grabbing, rolling or twisting around the head-neck area. Minimum sanction, yellow card. Maximum sanction, red card. Number 2, accidental tackle. This is where a player makes accidental contact with an opponent's head during a tackle, including where the ball carrier slips into the tackle. Minimum sanction, penalty. For full details and wording, go to worldrugby.org/player welfare.
So to look in more detail, an accidental tackle is where a player makes contact with another player's head or neck area during a tackle or attempted tackle or during any other phase of the game. If a player makes accidental contact with the opponent's head, either directly or where the tackle starts below the line of the shoulders, the tackler may be sanctioned. This includes situations where the ball carrier slips into the tackle, with a minimum sanction of a penalty. Now, that sounds a bit odd with a minimum sanction of a penalty, but he may be sanctioned. Let's look at that in a little detail. So why do we say may be sanctioned? Well, there are going to be occasions where even the hardest of souls would assess the situation and say the tackler could not help making contact with an opponent's head. This is and will be a very subjective rule. So in order to provide a baseline for referees to work from, we're going to draw a line level with the hips of the tackled player, the ball carrier, when they're standing. So if the tackled player is dipping below the line of his own hips, we can say that the tackler was probably unable to prevent any contact with the head. Comes with a common sense caveat as always. You must, as the referee, use your judgment. Were we always going to go for the neck or head area, even though the player was dipping? Was it in the act of scoring a try? And we're always heading for that part of the body. So you must use your common sense to make sure that you're not just applying this as a broad brush. So when we look at the reckless tackle, it's contact made during the tackle or attempted tackle where the player knew or should have known that there was a risk of making contact with the head of the opponent, but carried on anyway. This sanction applies even if the tackle starts below the line of the shoulders. This type of contact also applies to grabbing, rolling and twisting around the head or neck area, even if that contact starts below the line of the shoulders. We very often forget that the same approach must be applied in a situation such as a ruck as it does in a tackle. So for the reckless tackle, The minimum sanction is a yellow card, and the maximum on-field sanction a red card. Now, more recently, the EPCR gave a communication to referees in that competition, and it said this: regarding your communication on this specific matter, if you think you did not see an act of foul play, please don't use the word accidental and then continue to say there is no foul play for me, so play on. As soon as they have said it was accidental and it has made contact with the head, that is foul play. It's just accidental, not reckless, and therefore it needs to be sanctioned, or should be sanctioned, with at least a penalty kick, except for our caveats, obviously. So we look at high tackles now with three specific guidelines. Number one, where was the contact? Both the initial contact and the final location. Was it using the hand, the arm, or the shoulder? The second one is the action involved. Was it accidental, reckless, or deliberate? And thirdly, the force involved. And we weigh those up in order to decide upon what sanction we should take. We're going to have a look now at a clip from Rugby Tonight where referee Wayne Barnes was invited into the studio to talk about this very subject.
World Rugby released this press release saying there were going to be some changes to law, and then that's all we heard from them really, the strict description of how the law was going to change, and then it was left to you referees to implement. Now, you must have felt under an enormous amount of pressure going into this weekend, A, to get it right, and also that you didn't want too many incidents that the back pages were talking about rather than the rugby.
Yeah, look, first of all, Ben, looking at those hits, that's what rugby is about. That's why we, as referees, as fans, we love going to watch a game. We love seeing incidents like that. And, you know, for us, not really any pressure because nothing's changed. You know, we came in at pre-season, we spoke with you and we talked about players protecting players, you know, who they're playing against. So if you're going to kick for a ball, you don't kick him in the head on the way through. And we said we'd red card that. We also said if you're going to play the man in the air and he comes down dangerously, we're going to red card that player as well because you've got to protect that man in the air. And then November, all the international referees got together and we said, look, we've got to make sure not are we only protecting players in the air, but on the floor, but also in that tackle situation. So in November, we said, right, let's go out and let's make sure we protect that players from those really dangerous high shots. What we're not trying to get rid of is those hits. We're not getting rid of, you know, tackles which are just hard. And an accidental high tackle was a high tackle last year, it is this year. It was just an accident, but it's just an accident now. But they were both high tackles, so nothing's changed.
It's good to see. Maybe just the sanctions have got a bit tougher, but the laws have really stayed the same. We're going to have a look at a couple of the clips from this weekend that maybe were borderline. I don't think a penalty was given on this one, but it's Christian Wade running across the field on Charlie Thacker. It's that old seatbelt challenge, yeah. wrapping your arm over the top of the shoulder of the man. What are your thoughts there?
Look, as you know, Ben, we all get together as the Premiership referees on a Monday. We have a look at clips of that. Look, that's clearly a penalty. You know, he's going over the top and he's made contact with the head. But everyone who watched that game, everyone who's seen that now doesn't think that's a yellow card. We've got to have a bit of common sense as referees. We've got to understand what players are trying to do. He's got that slightly wrong. He's made a bit of contact. There's not a lot of force. Penalty should have been given. It wasn't, but nothing more.
And then the next one we're going to look at is a tight head on a fly half. A tight head's always going to want to put a shot on him, but he just gets stepped on the inside, John Welsh, on George Ford there.
Yeah, look, and he almost just, you know, a little bit of contact on the shoulder, up to the face, you know, almost tickles him across the face. As you said, he's been stepped. There's nothing more than a penalty in that, which Greg gave on the day. No one expects that to be a yellow card. No one's going to be given a yellow card. It's
almost that reaction, isn't it? I've used the example that sometimes when you drop something at home and it's a bit heavy, for some reason you stick your foot out to try and catch it. You think, why on earth did I do that? It's that instant reaction. As long as there's no malice in it, you're happy for that to play on.
The instant reaction, not the big swinging arm which smacks someone straight in the head.
We're going to get to the most famous example of the weekend, the big one everyone's talking about, Jeff Parling. Brad Barrett goes in first, Barrington next. It's a horrific looking challenge. Obviously Parling was knocked out probably by Barrett originally. Jeff Parling is starting to go down towards the ground. Let's hear what the ref said.
Direct to the head at force. That leaves me with a little option. This guy is sent from the field to play. It's a red card. Direct contact with the shoulder to the head of the player on the floor. That's a red card. I'm sorry.
Now, I felt so sorry for Ian Tempest in this game. He's a young referee. This is a out of the ordinary incident, let's be fair. I thought his description, whether people agree with what he got right, was absolutely spot on. But he must have been thinking, I don't want to send 2 players off at once, otherwise we're going to have fans that have paid a lot of money. Yeah. Maybe I should deal with it, let the authorities deal with one of them. At least I've punished Saracens in some respect.
Yeah. Look, I think there's a couple of things, and you've touched upon one of them. I've been refereeing in a Premiership since 2003. I haven't seen anything like that before, and we've discussed this before. You've been involved in a game for years and years and years, Ben. You've not seen anything like that. So that's unique. Ian then has a few moments to get all the information and make what is a really good decision at the time. You know, of course, it's then in hindsight, he can make a better decision. You know, I've heard people saying, well, one's a high tackle and the other one's a high tackle, so they're 2 red cards. But you've got to look at it holistically. You know, was the falling player caused by Barrett? Was Barrington's kind of angle changed because of the falling player? Did he slip into it? There's so much to take into consideration. And Ian took all of that into consideration and made a decision, the best decision he could at the time. And we've discussed it. You know, you thought Barrington was the worst offender. You know, Austin on the day thought that it was Barrett. There are those grey areas. I think the learning for us as referees is that if that happens again on the weekend, and let's hope it doesn't, you know, because we want to make sure players are safe. If that happens on the weekend, we're probably going to see 2 cards now. I'm not saying 2 red cards, but we had 2 incidences where we had illegal challenges. Now, I know there was a hearing last night, and we know what the result of that was. But we then had the opportunity of hearing from the player, hearing from the coach, probably hearing from an expert, and I'm pretty certain there was a very smart QC who was representing them.
Absolutely. So the hearing found that actually Barrett's was a worse offence in their mind, because that's a panel that have opinions as well.
Exactly.
And that Barrington was only reacting to a falling player. And I guess from Ian Tempest's point of view as well, it's such big news the first weekend. Red cards, 2 red cards in one incident, and suddenly we're all saying, see, we told you it's going to ruin our game. So I think he did really well. Now, we're going to have a look at one from a few weeks ago and see, would this have been a penalty? This is Ashton, hit by Brady, going for a tackle. It's an accidental head clash, but World Rugby have used the word accident in their ruling.
Yeah, and what we're talking about with accidents are accidental high tackles. There is nothing high about that challenge. That is not foul play. That is play on. Though JP does really well here to stop the game and say, hold on, we've got an injured player. So he might stop the game, but no one's going to penalise that, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my thought as well. And you know, we don't want to see that. And you say either foul play, not foul play. If it's not foul play, you don't even consult the rest of the sanctions in terms of how physical it is. Exactly. Right, let's have a look at Randall Morrison. You see break by Marlon Yard, covering player. What's your thoughts there?
So you asked about, you know, foul play, and then what are we considering? We've got pace, we've got force, we've got direct contact to the head, which stops the attack. That is a red card. He was given a red card on a day, and I'd imagine if we see that every single week, whether that was 2017 or 2007, that's a red card.
Red card. Totally agree with you. Now, this one was a yellow card in the game between Saints and Leicester. Luther Burrell coming across. How does that differ? Yeah,
so you can see just from watching it, it's not as high in speed, it's not as much force. The player hits a shoulder and then goes up onto the head. So that's the ones where no one expects that as a red card. Using a bit of common sense, JP rightfully puts him in the bin for 10 minutes and says, get those tackles a bit lower. And remember, this is aimed at. It's just to lowering the tackle a little bit. So a nice decision there. And that's what
I've got to say, Craig, to have a referee come in, explain those, because some of them are wrong, some of them are right, but it makes it so much better for the viewers of rugby that they know how it's being. You're empowering them to know what's going on. So often we just get, this is the change to the laws, live with it. So thank you, Wayne.
It's great because players say they love being ref by Wayne, because you talk to them, you talk to us as well as fans. As Ben said, thank you very much. A special round of applause for Wayne, please. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So a really good description there from Wayne Barnes. Like you said, things that were high tackles before are still high tackles now. It's just the things that we consider before deciding upon a sanction. So let's have a look at some more.
Minutes of this match. Ludic goes into contact. Shanahan.
High tackle.
Advantage being played. Well, everybody wants to get concussion out of the game, but is this the way to do it? No.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, so don't listen to the commentary, there's nothing wrong with that. It's an accidental high tackle.
And his arm slips up.
It starts around the arm and just slips up. That is an accidental high tackle that needs to be punished with a penalty, and it is penalty only. Look at the
ring rose. Nathewa. Oh, that looked high as well, and George Peacey knew it.
Check.
Always happens when you're coming across and you get stepped on the inside. The reaction is to put the hand out, but you can't do that.
So this is the same as the one that they were talking about on rugby tonight. It's that instinct to put the arm out. There's no swing really. There's no force. It is just an arm out.
In a reactive situation.
He changed the run. Okay. There you go.
So really good description from the referee. He's changed his angle. He's put his arm out as an instinct. He's caught him high. That's a yellow card. Let's have a look at another one.
Find Jimmy Heaslip. A lot of room to move in there on him. Burn the carry from Jack McGrath. This is all Leinster now. Zero tolerance directives.
Contact, JP.
Oh, there's a high contact.
Yeah,
okay.
I think we know what's going to happen to that man. He's been frustrated. Is frustrated by the way Sexton has been dominating this game.
So,
we saw him shoot out the line once already, but that is a really dirty challenge. He's gone over the top there, swinging arm as well, made contact with the head, and that's a red.
Yeah,
all day.
Reckless contact with the head is a red card.
I'm not thinking red. Yeah.
Start high, stay
Okay, so it's
high.
That's a red before any change in the rules.
Or deliberate,
so it's just a matter of what we have here is we have foul play. Okay, so it's a high tackle. Then we got to look at it's at force, it's at speed, and it's straight to the head. Okay, it's a red card. No, there's not enough there. I'm sorry, you're gone. Francois, that's it.
So although the player was saying he was dipping into it, there clearly wasn't. If he was dipping into it and the player had gone low enough, he would have just caught him around perhaps the high chest or the shoulder, and certainly not direct to the head. So that's a red card every time. Now it's time to test yourself. So using that piece of paper that we got earlier on, numbered 1 to 10, I want you to write down your response to each of these tackles that you're about to see. So there are 4 outcomes. One is play on, penalty only, yellow card, or red card. Watch them each at full speed and only once before you're making your decision. So don't rewind and watch again. Just see what you can get from the first time you see it, and then we'll go through and review them after we've seen all 10, and we'll show you some other angles and slow motions. Now there are a few of these because of the camera angle on the initial play where we do show it to you again. Okay, so here's tackle number 1.
There on Healy, that was good pressing defence there from the Ospreys again.
You can see this one twice just because that was a poor camera angle to start with.
Suspicion of foul play.
So, on your paper, decide whether that is play on, penalty only, yellow card, or red card. Tackle number 2. So your initial thoughts, tick one of the boxes against tackle number 2. Here's tackle number 3.
Vantage, knock on. Vantage.
Here comes tackle number 4. Tackle number 5 you'll see twice.
Takalua. Hodgson, Tate again, and Eastman just a tad high there. And that.
Full speed first of all, Tom.
Let's have a look at this. Just steps him.
Tackle number 6.
Pole position you would have thought at the moment for test run.
Tackle number 7, you'll see twice again.
Un quart d'heure de la fin du match. Tiousbourg a vu un intervalle et il s'est refermé devant lui avec ce plaquage haut. Avantage de Nyanga avec Manounou maintenant. Monsieur Poitet laisse l'avantage au Toulonnais. Tiousbourg, Bernard, capitaine de la Géorgie. On fait une pénalité, qu'est-ce que vous faites? Alors on voit la faute ici de Yannick Nyanga sur Sébastien Tiousbourg.
No, tackle number 8.
Au milieu du terrain, Foix qui vient défier, il s'enroule autour du premier des défenseurs, il a cassé un premier plaquage, le offload en direction de... Oh, le plaquage haut sur Baptiste.
Tackle number 9, you're going to see twice.
For accident, it's Bordeaux's ball.
Back you go.
Great counter up from Slade. Sarah one-handed, oh that's a little high.
Nigel foul play. Correct, against White on the floor.
So there's the tackle from Johnny Hill, which was clearly high.
And finally, tackle number 10.
Kaiser feeds it back to Para. On there to Naikatathi, to Spedding. Inside from Abendon, who's taken a knock to the...
Okay, so looking at your piece of paper now with your decisions for your 10 clips, let's have a look through them in turn and see whether your initial thoughts match what you're going to see on a slow-mo. So here's tackle number 1 again and the full clip.
There on Healy, that was good pressing defence there from the Ospreys again. And they're under so much pressure here, O'Connor, all across. Suspicion of foul play. And it's round the neck area by Hanno Dirksen on the replacement Kyle Blade. Remember, zero tolerance now to anything above the shoulders, head and neck area, as we saw
Okay, John, it's on the screen
last night in that Scarlet's Ulster game, if you watched it.
Second angle's just coming up now, Johnny.
Yeah, thank you.
You know that Kellen Blade definitely...
So let's have a look at what we're going to consider. First of all, look at the approach. Where was the contact initial and final? Was the action accidental, reckless or deliberate? And what was the force? So in this case, the tackle starts high and stays high. He goes really high, his legs are outstretched. He is never ever going to take that player anywhere other than high. And it stays high throughout the whole tackle. So it can only ever be a high tackle. Was it accidental or reckless? Again, going back to the definition, should the player or would the player have known that he could have gone and made contact with the head and neck? Absolutely, all the time. Therefore, this is a reckless tackle. What about the force? Well, coming from behind as he's done, there's no real force to it. So, in this case, we have a nailed-on yellow card. So, tackle number 2.
Parisien de relancer depuis leurs 22 mètres avec l'attaque de la ligne de Doumerou. Bonneval, la passe pour Saint-Zel.
Et il y aura un arbitrage.
En bout de ligne, pas de décalage. C'est vrai que Saint-Zel aussi descend d'un cran au moment de sa prise de balle.
So let's have a look at this using our 3 points: contact, action and force. So frame by frame, it's a little unclear. From the front, it looks as though it started on the neck chin area and carried on upwards, but from the back it looks like there is shoulder to shoulder contact initially. Whatever you say where it started, it went high and stayed high, and it did it very, very quickly. The player is, however, looking down into the tackle, but there is a good deal of force involved. So you've got to ask yourself on this one, if it looks bad, it probably is bad. And where was your first viewpoint of this one? Where are you going initially? So let's look at what happened when we put this to a panel of referees. Well, you could expect that nobody went penalty only for that one, or even play on. There was a split decision, however, between a yellow card because he was looking down and it was reckless, but certainly not deliberate. And it went up, it then finished high as well, and there was a good deal of force. Others in the room decided that he was always going high and it should be a red card. I think regardless of which one you went for there, you could, particularly with the benefit of a video replay, justify your answer. So a very difficult one to look at. Let's have a look at the next. So let's now have a look at tackle number 3.
Vantage, knock on. Vantage.
So following our approach again of contact, action and force, this tackle starts high and stays high. You can see that the hand goes immediately over the shoulder and the arm is underneath the chin. You're going to ask yourself now, however, is this accidental or reckless? In other words, could he or should he have known that there was a chance of making contact to the head or neck? Then, how would you justify whatever that answer is to the players, the spectators, coaches, and even your society? There's no real force involved there, so this is a little bit of a tricky one. When we asked the room, this was again a split decision between penalty only and a yellow card. Some people saying that, well, it was accidental, he didn't mean to do that, he didn't mean to go high, it was just poorly timed and a very unfortunate tackle. Other people were saying, well, he should have known that by going that high with his arms, he should have known that it was going to potentially make contact with the head or neck. I think in this one, you could be justified on either one, but also look at the temperature of the game. Is this the first time there has been a high tackle in the game? Or are we into number 4, 5 or 6 high tackles? Is it something that's persistent for one team or even one player? So whatever it is, stick by your decision and be prepared to justify that. Here's tackle number 4.
Cuthbert under its feet and under pressure from Ed Jackson. Howard is in there as well.
High tackle. In.
He's gone. He's ended up round the neck, so it's a penalty nowadays, isn't it? So
there we are. It starts around the arms, but it does slip up quite quickly. What about the action? It's clearly accidental. He hasn't gone straight up to the head or neck area. He has started low, and there's no real force in it. It's interesting to note the reaction of one of the other players who advises the referee that he was perhaps falling into the tackle or dipping into it. Well, as you can see there, he clearly wasn't. He's almost upright, and certainly he is nowhere near our guidelines of being below the level of his own hips. So don't always be fooled by what other people tell you. Again, when we asked those in the room, everybody went for penalty kicks, so we're quite happy with that one. Let's have a look now at tackle number 5.
Takalua. Hodgson, Tate again, and Eastman just a tad high there. And that.
Full speed first of all, Tom.
Let's have a look at this. Just steps if it's high.
It's a yellow card.
It's a yellow, probably. It's going to be a yellow.
It's a yellow now. After January the 3rd, I think that's a red card.
It's not swinging, Austin. He's not swung his arm. He's put his arm out.
Yeah, but at no point is it below the ball. It's always at head height, and that is what.
So it's a yellow card.
We're trying to eliminate.
We're just on this last one now if we need it.
It's going to be a yellow card, I would say.
I think the referees,
even
under the new regulations, will still look at intent and was it
This is quite a tricky one. Let's have a look at some of the pointers. So the ball carrier steps the defender. You have to then ask yourself, like earlier on, is this an instinctive reaction just to reach out? Well, the initial and final contact is always high. As you can see from the clip there, that's the initial contact, which is with the forearm and upper arm straight to the chin. In this case, did the tackler know or should have known it would be high? Yes. So we are looking at reckless here, and we are starting at yellow card. There's also a good deal of force involved, but I think most importantly, unlike the previous clip that we saw where the player had been stepped by the ball carrier and it was just a hand that went out, this one, if you look back on the video, you will actually see that the Wasp's 12 dips onto his right and then comes up again with force forwards and upwards into the chin of the ball carrier. When we asked the room on this one, I think because of those things, and they used the example of he was not just holding out a hand, he was actually swinging that arm. Everybody in the room went red on that, and I think that's the right call. So let's have a look now at tackle number 6.
Pole position you would have thought at the moment for Test scrum half Conor Murray, the way he's playing for both Munster and country this season. Penalty only from the high chair.
The zero approach to reckless and accidental head contact, and there you can see the man.
So the referee there said shoulder first, then up, but if you have a look there at where the contact was, it was actually higher than the shoulder, but the referee probably wouldn't have been able to see that initially from the viewpoint. So the ball carrier is dipping, but not significantly. Although the referee said that the initial contact is from the shoulder and up, you can see there on that still that it actually makes contact with the head directly. The tackler should have known that there would be contact, therefore it is at least reckless. There's moderate force here. So what did you give? And more importantly, what were your reasons for that? So just review those now. And let's have a look where our room went on this one. So again, we had a split decision in the jury, and there was a good consensus for a yellow card, with some people thinking that was a red card because the contact was always high and it was with force. I think in this case, if you gave a red card, it would be justifiable but harsh. I think the best approach here is the yellow card for the reasons that we've stated. But if you had gone red card with that one, you could be justified in your approach. So the next one is tackle number.
Tiusbourg a vu un intervalle et s'est refermé devant lui avec ce plaquage haut. Avantage Nyanga avec Manounou maintenant. Monsieur Poitet laisse l'avantage au Toulonnais. Tiusbourg. Bernard capitaine de la Géorgie. On fait une pénalité. Qu'est-ce que vous faites? Alors on voit la faute ici de Yannick Nyanga sur Sébastien Tiusbourg. Ouais, qui se lie au niveau du cou. Quoi, sur le haut.
So this is the classic seatbelt tackle where the arm comes over the top of the shoulder. Regardless of what the ball carrier is doing, there he's dipping very slightly. So it starts over the shoulder and then slips to the head. There's no real force, it's coming from behind. What our jury thought, and hopefully the same as you, they all thought it was a penalty only in that case. But again, you must consider where they are on the pitch and the temperature of the game prior to this. Have there been lots of high tackles? Has this player been a problem before, or is this one of the first offences? So we take everything into consideration in the bigger view. So here's number.
Au milieu du terrain, Foix qui vient défier, il s'enroule autour du premier des défenseurs, il a cassé un premier plaquage, le offload en direction du coup. Oh, le plaquage haut sur Baptiste Couille. On va revoir un peu les images, mais visiblement, ouais, effectivement, ça a l'air oulala, énorme plaquage haut.
Now we should always look at player reaction as well. It's usually a good indication, and if things look bad, they generally are. So As you can see, the contact there is with the head and neck right from the beginning. You've got to ask yourself, is that accidental, reckless, or deliberate? There is a lot of force. Remember, if it looks bad, it usually is. So our jury in the room at the time when we asked this came out unequivocally and said that was a red card. And I think that's absolutely the right decision there. So here's tackle number 9.
For Exeter, it's Bordeaux's ball.
Back you go.
Great counter up from Slade. Sarah one-handed, oh, that's a little high.
Nigel foul play. Correct, against White on the floor.
So there's the tackle from Johnny Hill, which was clearly high.
Okay, so contact in this case is high. It's with the upper arm and over the shoulder with the forearm. This one's not as clear cut as most. You've got to ask yourself, is this accidental or is it reckless? So just have a moment now to think about what you decided initially and why you decided that. What were your reasons for going with what you had decided? So when we put this one to a room before, there was a split decision again, with a number of people going for yellow card because it was high initially, high at the end, and they thought reckless. Therefore, the minimum sanction, according to World Rugby, should be the yellow card. There are a few people who thought that was a red card, but they, in this case, were the minority. Although I think you could use the evidence there to justify a red card, but it would be, again, a harsh decision and one that would be much more difficult to sell than a yellow card. I think everybody would expect on the pitch and on the sidelines that a referee would give that as a yellow card. I think to pull out a red, don't think people would be expecting that too much. So the last one now, tackle.
Kaiser feeds it back to Para. On there to Naikatathi, to Spedding. Inside from Abendon, who's taken a knock to the head.
High tackle here.
Checking possible foul play.
Bendenon's going down.
So interestingly, although the TMO says checking for possible foul play, none of the on-field officials have made any comment at the time.
So that
It's as Bendenon's going down, just catches him around the neck, potentially in the head.
show that in real time. Simon?
First and foremost, Bendenon, does his foot just touch the try line?
I'll try and
touch
get
line,
the
sorry.
clearly slipping into that. It's clearly slipping into that tackle for me.
So this one really is not clear cut at all. The contact is high and it stays high, but the tackler has clearly aimed for the mid-waist area on the tackled player. The tackled player is actually falling at the time the tackler makes contact, thanks to that tap tackle behind. There is force, undoubtedly. So you've got to ask yourself there, could the tackler have known he would make contact with the head? Well, he's not looking at the player. He's committed to the tackle with his head down and he's aiming for mid-waist. The ball carrier has slipped clearly into that because of the tap tackle. And if you notice, the on-field officials at the time made no reaction. So your question really is this. Yes, there has been contact with the head. It is accidental. I think anybody would agree that there's nothing reckless or deliberate about that action. So, according to World Rugby, it says the player may be sanctioned and the minimum sanction is a penalty. However, if you recall the slide about may be sanctioned, and we gave some guidance as to where we would say the player has put himself into a position where the tackler cannot help it. I think this is one of those cases, not because of the actions of the tackler, but the actions of the the tackle player, but the actions of the previous tackler. And because of that, the tackler It has gone at a safe height, but the player has fallen into him at the same time. Now, in the room, because of those circumstances, we had a split decision when we asked this before, with some referees saying play on because of the maybe sanctioned and the fact that the tackler really could not know that that player was going to be falling and he would make contact with the head. Others went for penalty only, minimum sanction because it was accidental. I think you would be justified with both. However, given the fact that the player went down with contact to the head, you would be right in that case with the ball being close to stop the game, particularly at our level, to stop the game, make sure that the player is okay, give yourself some thinking time about what happened before deciding on your action afterwards as to whether to restart with a scrum or whether to restart with a penalty. So just in summary then, we look at three things when we are judging high tackles. The first of all is the contact, the point of contact initially and the final contact, whether it's with the hand, the arm or the shoulder. Clearly just a hand stuck out that contacts with the head is nothing as severe as a shoulder going into a player. Was the action accidental, reckless or deliberate? Don't forget, accidental is going to be a minimum of a penalty unless, and we come back to that other slide about maybe sanctioned, or is it reckless where we started at yellow card and working up, or indeed is it deliberate, in which case we may be starting at the red card. And then determine what force was involved and the speed as well. Now, I hope that's giving you some food for thought. Please do send any questions that you may have on those clips, on things from your game over the last few weeks or anything in the future. Please send those clips or questions to nldreftraining@gmail.com and we will do our very best to answer them as quickly as possible. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and that you've learned something from it as well.